to the Monday, December 2nd, 2024 West Fargo City Commission meeting. Before I call the meeting to order, I'd ask that everybody in the audience please silence their cell phones with the exception of our emergency personnel. Please join the commission in a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Present.
Here.
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 Thank you. Let the record show all commissioners are present. Next order of business is to approve the order of the agenda. It is in your packets.
So moved.
Commissioner Olson moves to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Anderson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the order of the agenda as presented. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item E is the approval of the minutes of November 18th, 2024. Commissioners, it has been distributed in your packets.
Motion to approve.
Commissioner Zundell moves to approve. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Jorgensen seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of November 18th as presented. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next order of business is building permits. The building permit report has been distributed and in your packets.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Jorgensen. I have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Olson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the building permits as presented. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next order of business is the consent agenda. We have items A through B.
Move to approve.
Commissioner Olson moves to approve. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Anderson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda containing items A through and B. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. We now move on to the regular agenda. Item number 1 on the regular agenda is public comment. Madam Secretary, has anybody signed up for public comment? All right, thank you. We are now out of public comment, and we're moving into public hearings on item number 2. This is for information. Henceforth, going forward, when anyone has a item on the agenda that is in a public hearing, it will be moved immediately to item number 2. So, Madam Secretary, when you prepare the agenda, we want the public hearing ones to be first, out of respect for the public that comes to speak to these, that they aren't waiting until late in the meetings to have their opportunity to address it. So out of respect for the public and the taxpayers, we're going to move, our public hearings will take place on item number 2 on a regular basis. Commissioners, any questions, concerns?
Great idea.
All right, very good. Moving forward, item number 3 is A24-30, Meadow Ridge 18th edition, a request for final plot approval and final approval of a planned unit development, including a PUD concept plan, a PUD detailed development plan, and the second reading of a rezoning ordinance. We're going to call on Mr. Aaron Nelson, our Director of Planning for the City of West Fargo. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, President Dardis and Commissioners. So item 3 is a request for final plat approval and final approval of a planned unit development. This item was presented to the Commission at the, for first reading of the PUD ordinance at the last meeting on November 18th, at which time a public hearing was held. In summary, the purpose of the replat and amended PUD is to allow for the demolition, reconstruction, and ultimately the expansion of the Perry Center Maternity Home located near 45th Street and 7th Avenue East. There have been no changes to the proposal since last presented for approval of the first reading, and so I'm happy to go through any details or provide a brief summary if you'd like. Otherwise, the request tonight is to approve the final plat and the PUD, which includes the PUD concept plan, PUD detailed development plan, and the second reading and final adoption of the PUD ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Commissioner, any questions for the gentleman?
Make a motion to approve?
Commissioner Zendel moves to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Anderson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the A24-30 Meadow Ridge 18th edition request for a final plot approval and final approval of a PUD, including the concept plan, the PUD detailed development plan, the second reading of rezoning ordinance. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Item number 4 is A24-2, the Sand Hills 8th edition, a request for approval of a second reading of rezone ordinance and final plot. Again, we call on Mr. Nelson.
Thank you. So item 4, as was just mentioned, is a request for approval of second reading of rezone ordinance and final plat approval. This item was also presented to the Commission for first reading of the rezone ordinance at the last meeting on November 18th, at which time a public hearing was held. In quick summary, the purpose of this replat and rezoning is to allow for future industrial development of the Sand Hills area. The proposed subdivision includes the replatting of existing lots and the vacation and reconfiguration of public rights-of-way. The plat also includes subdivision improvement agreement and public dedication agreement, which are both included in your packet tonight, and which outline the terms of land acquisition by the city for purposes of expansion of existing stormwater pond, which you can see on the map here in front of you, as well as payment in lieu of land dedication by the developer. The proposed rezone would result in the privately owned land being rezoned to LI, light industrial, and the city-owned land within this subdivision being rezoned as P, public facilities. There have been no changes to the proposal since it was presented for approval of the first reading, other than some minor technical updates to the plat document, which is included in your packet as well. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any, or to provide any additional details regarding the proposal here. Otherwise, the request tonight is to approve the second reading of the rezone ordinance and approval of the final plat, including associated agreements for land purchase of regional stormwater pond, contingent on receipt of all final documents associated with this plat. And so, as noted on the cover sheet here, the request is contingent on receipt of some of those final documents. As of today, we're just waiting on 2 additional documents from the basically consent to plat documents from the mortgage holders are the last 2 remaining documents we're waiting on. So with that, happy to answer any questions you have for staff.
Commissioner Jorgensen has a question.
I just have a question along that south frontage area. Is there gonna be a street that goes that way, or is that, you know, like if you come in off of, eventually there's that overpass that's gonna come there. Is there gonna be a street that goes to the west to our diversion?
There's no right-of-way platted for, are you talking a crossing to the diversion channel as it goes west of this area here?
Yeah.
So there's no platted right-of-way that would provide for a crossing there. Any crossing of the diversion would be once you cross north, and then you could go west.
Right, I'm just wondering if there was gonna be like a frontage road like there is to the east of there.
No, there's no intention to have any sort of frontage road adjacent to the interstate.
I think it would be more business friendly if there was. But I did talk to Mrs. Berglund, and I know there's future businesses looking out there, and this isn't going to affect them, and they're behind this. So I want to be more business friendly. So if you got to come in off a 3rd and try to get to your property, it could be a little tougher. But
Yep. So ultimately, the applicant did work to acquire a number of different properties out here, and ultimately that was kind of their choice in terms of configuration of the street rights of way.
sure. Nope. Thank you for answering.
Yep.
Any additional questions? Mr. Nelson, when is the 5% dedication requirement, when is that applied? I mean, there's public land here, there's, 5% of what?
Yep. So the 5% dedication, that comes from the city's subdivision ordinance. And anytime you're platting new land for the first time, or anytime you're replatting land that has not been developed and that has not previously provided land dedication, that's when that 5% requirement is in effect. And it's 5% of the gross area of the area being subdivided.
The gross area.
Yep.
Okay.
Or a fee in lieu. So typically, the applicant would reach out to the West Fargo Park District to inquire if there's any need for any parkland. If not, typically the Park District would prefer fee in lieu. That fee in lieu can be used for park facilities as well as any other public facilities that benefit the immediate area.
Thank you. Mr. Olson?
Aaron, can you scroll back a couple, just to the different map that shows it better? No, the other way, I think.
Oh.
Right there. So we've got the greenish line and then all the yellow lines, and it just zapped out. We have gremlins in the commission chambers today. Right where you've got that little bulb there where it says A24-2 proposed subdivision, there's some yellow lines drawn. Have that already been replatted, or is there a plan to, rezoned? Is that going to be rezoned at a later time, or what's the plan for that?
Yeah, so you're talking the area outside of the teal boundary
right
here.
where your cursor is. Yep.
Yep, so a couple of these lots, right where the bubble is, for example, they were replatted with the, I believe it's the Sand Hills 6th edition, and they were rezoned to light industrial at that time.
Okay.
The zoning map, shows the purple areas are the light industrial zoning district.
Gotcha.
And then a little further to the east, those areas are still remnants of that original Meadowbrook Park subdivision from the 1950s that are still, they remain in the agricultural zoning district.
Oh, they do. Okay.
Anyone else? Commissioner Jorgensen?
Is there a proposed plan for the remaining two houses that are up there on, I think it's Grass?
Yep, so there are two houses out there. I know the applicant has indicated they're still in discussions with some of those property owners, so I would, I guess, defer to the applicant if they would care to weigh in on that question.
No, that's fine. I have a shop up there and I drive by and I will not comment.
Anything additional from Mr. Nelson?
Move we approve.
Commissioner Olson moves that we approve on item number 4. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Anderson seconds. And I have a motion and a second to approve A24-2, Sand Hills 8th edition, a request for approval of second reading and a final plot. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 5, the City of West Fargo Handbook. Call on Sarah Goshevic, Director of Human Resources. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Commission President, Dardis, and Commissioners. I'll get my voice back here in a minute. Today I just have kind of a read-through for you guys of an overview of the changes that we made to the handbook. This handbook will be for the 2025 year, so effective January 1st. We are in the process of implementing a new policy system that would take over for the purposes of this handbook. So this handbook is just meant to kind of get us through most of next year until that policy piece takes over. So as I sent to you late last week, there were some changes that we made. If you would like, I can run through those changes, or if you have questions on the documents that you've seen, I'm willing to answer those as well.
Commissioners, questions for the lady? Mr. Jorgensen?
I just saw the one part about the drug policy. Are all the city employees susceptible to random drug testing?
No. Random drug testing is done for employees that have a CDL license, so likely you will find most of them in our public works departments. All employees are susceptible to reasonable suspicion testing, however. So if they meet those criteria, then we do have the right to have them tested under reasonable suspicion.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Anything else? Very good, thank you.
My hope would be that we would bring this back to you for final approval on December 16th. So if there are any further revisions between now and then, I'll be sure to send those out to you.
Thank you. Item number 6 is an update on the parking regulation discussion. Call on Mr. Matt Anvick, Director of Public Works. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Commissioner President, Commissioners. Just wanted to bring this back. At the November 4th meeting, we did talk about the different kind of different ideas that were discussed about changing the parking in the maintenance zones. And I guess after further discussion of that, we kind of went back and we got a little bit more input on how many tickets that we've written this year in those areas. And then there was the question asked about getting some of that word, or, messaging out to the people. We do have the Nextdoor app where we'd be able to get some of that messaging out. We have just under 11,000 members on the Nextdoor. So we're not hitting everybody, but we would be able to get that messaging out to quite a few of them, plus our social media. As far as tickets wise, I think there's only about a little over 1,500 tickets written from January 1st to October 24th this year. So when you break that down, it's, I guess, about 150, right about 160 a month for ticket wise. So when you're looking at that and the amount of cars that are out there per week, it's not actually that many. It's just certain areas. So we'd like to get more information on it. And then speaking with commissioners on Dill on this, we'd like to take, I guess, the next 6 months. We have our new plow op software our snowplow tracker, where we can now mark down cars that are out there. So once the guys get a little bit more used to this new software, getting to January, February, any kind of snowstorms like that, we'll have them start marking cars that are in those maintenance zones, and then really see in the street sweeping part of that in the spring too as well. We'll track complaints, as many that we get, and then we'll just kind of compile all that data, bring that back in next June, and see if there really is a need to do that, or to be able to move or change the parking regulations by then, or if it's the amount of cars that we see out there in those maintenance zones, or the amount of complaints we're getting are kind of minimal and not really worth changing anything right now. So that's, I guess, where we're at right now, is we're just going to compile some data over the next 6 months and then bring that back before you in June or July of next year.
Thank you, Mr. Anvick. Mr. Zunt, Commissioner Olson.
Matt, last week you and I had a discussion and we covered this. You told me that there were several cities throughout the state that are basically adopting a similar policy that we've got in place right now.
Yeah, there's a few that are doing this. Grand Forks is similar with maintenance zones. They split theirs into kind of a 2 days, so they have a little bit more to cover. But it's very similar to what we're doing with the maintenance zones. Other towns, it's no parking basically from November to April in certain areas. So there are other ones. So we're not much different than other cities. It's just a little tweak here and there to fit the certain cities that work better for their public works or their community. So,
Commissioner Zundell.
One of the comments that we made, or like the thought of collecting some of the data, was kind of multifold. The ticketing is not always equal, so we've been using the ticketing amounts per numbers, depending on, is it summer and we have more people that are circulating due to school, or they go back to school. But the other thing that we were curious on as to if there's maybe commonalities we can find, like, are certain street structures or types more prone to have problems, where can we isolate certain parts of town that are perhaps more problematic, where we're seeing more one-on-one resident complaints, and see if we can do something in those specific areas. So being able to mark the cars, I think, will help with that. My other question, this is the first time I think I'm hearing about the Nextdoor app. do you think it would be possible that we could maybe set a goal to even increase the amount of people that are subscribing to that app? Because, I mean, obviously you can subscribe to a lot of our stuff on our websites. I think that's kind of forgotten about, and knowing the ability to do that. But I think the more people that we can get aware of how we can get a hold of them, maybe the better. So I don't know if that's possible to like add to either utility bill messaging, or maybe that's something we can focus on our social media pages, or awareness just from this, just so people know where to get the information. Because obviously not everybody has Facebook, and not everybody has this, and not everybody has that, but maybe that might be a good goal to set, is if we have 11,000 now, how can we try and increase that number, or pick some platforms as to better communicate some of this stuff with?
Yeah, that was one of the conversations we had, after the last meeting, talked with Addie at the communications. You see, that's one thing that they can, push out on social media, other things, to get out there to see if we can get some more people to, add that Nextdoor app. We get what do we have, about 13,000 residences in town. So if we're at 11,000, that's getting pretty close. And then there's how many of those that don't use the internet yet, because of the
I'm gonna
demographic
call
or one thing or not.
Excuse me, Matt.
Sure.
I'm going to call on Emily. She's got something to offer there.
I was gonna say, at the bottom of our website, there are the little links at the bottom for Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, X, and Nextdoor. Just like standard, like they have on every for a typical website.
So yeah, we do have that, but yeah, we could do another push too as well. Try and get that out
Even
there.
just announcements, or, I mean, just every so often making sure that we're reminding the new people that are moving to town too, that maybe haven't, Nextdoor is not an app I would think to subscribe to on the bottom of a city page personally. I like to think I'm pretty young and hip, but, so that might be a good goal to strive for. Just continue, again,
Would you like us
continue
to vote on
messaging.
that?
That I'm young and hip? I think it was in the consent agenda, actually.
Right, very good.
So,
And if I can add one thing, I've brought it up to Dustin in our meetings or whatever, that I'd like to see a newsletter get progress on that, where people could sign up. It's just gonna be a new email. I mean, a lot of people in this town get their water bills through email. They could be added to that, so that'd be another tool to get it out there. I don't want to see a hard copy get mailed. I don't want the cost of the mail and the postage and the person doing it. But I think an email letter to the citizens, it'd be easy to hit somebody way more tech savvy than me to line this up, that hit 15,000 people. Boom. This is okay. All of a sudden you have a water main break and you need to close down First Avenue. We just,
Yep.
I think there's a different avenue to get our verbiage out. And I think, like I said, Dustin and I have had some talks, and, Rachel's been off on maternity leave or whatever, but I think coming forward in the next few months, I think we could strive to get there.
yeah, I think we used to have something like that, but I think we can probably get back. I think they are working on something like that to try and get that out.
I think we have the ability to subscribe on our website. Like, I know I'm subscribed to all of our communications. So for example, when there's a water main break, I do get an email that says there's a water main break, or like if the meeting time changes. So I know there is a current existence. They're not always super wordy or clear cut, maybe, on some of the information that comes out. It's very blunt, I think, within there. But there are current existing things that do exist that are getting sent out for updates that people could subscribe to in the meantime. But I think, even a bullet point. I know the Civic West group is also trying to send people to city commission meetings and other city meetings to provide kind of an update, maybe from a citizen's perspective, on their mailing list. So that's maybe, again, another opportunity for people to follow. But free messaging is better, obviously.
I just want to be as transparent as possible to the public. That's where a lot of people, I get what we have to do for the public meetings, but who gets the newspaper anymore? Who reads the public records? Nobody. And we're about to go through what's going to happen in Westwood, and I know those people have gotten letters, but it just, be as transparent as possible. I mean, if you get an email, you're more apt to open an email than versus going searching for something. And this is not on you by any means, Matt. I'm not saying that. I think we could do better as a city on posting this stuff, and people open their email once a week.
Yep. And
Your input
more,
would be very positive in that because in your position.
yep, no, definitely it's something we can look into. I know that we just might need to get Addie and Rachel a little bit of help to be able to, if we're gonna do that much messaging, they need a few more bodies to try and run that stuff too, so. But that is something that, we had to talk about getting that out, push that a little bit more and see what kind of avenues we can, reach those next few or those last few thousand people to get them to subscribe to that.
Anyone else? Anything for Matt? This item is an informational only at this time. So, thank you, Matt.
Thanks.
Item number 7, 2025 Public Works Mill and Overlay. I'm going to call on Mr. Dan Hansen. The purpose of this discussion is to create an improvement district number 2290 and to direct the engineering office to prepare an engineer's report. Mr. Hansen, good evening and welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner President Dardis and Commissioners. As you know, each year, Public Works has been performing mill and overlays in various neighborhoods and also on our arterial streets, and we're looking to do the same next year. In your packet, I'll jump down to the second page here. We have identified the neighborhoods that you see in yellow as neighborhoods that are in need of mill and overlay and street rehabilitation. There would be basically two components to this. There would be because of the ADA Act, we would need to do all the pedestrian ramps in the neighborhood in conjunction with the mill and overlay. We intend to do those through the concrete pavement repair project, and we do have in the CIP some monies set aside for pedestrian ramps. So that would be outside of this project, and we do not intend to assess for those costs. What this is for the actual milling of these streets, and then Public Works going in and installing the asphalt as they have done in different areas of town. There would be publicly bidding for the milling of the streets and also for the production and supply of the asphalt that we would be using for those. So we would be putting together plans and specifications for that and publicly bidding that portion of it. Obviously, we would be using Public Works staff for the installation of it, and the overall project management would be coordinated between Public Works and engineering staff. So what we're here for tonight is basically to present this improvement district map. In the 2024 CIP, whereas we used to historically assess 100% of the costs of mill and overlay projects, recently we had proposed a mill and overlay where we assessed 80%. We are now landing with the 2024 CIP at an assessment of 50% of the project costs with labor and trucking and things of that nature provided by the city. And those things that Public Works would be providing, that labor and those trucking rates would not be assessed to the residents. Those would be included in the overall costs to the city for doing business. But what would be assessed to the benefiting properties would be 50% of any and all costs that are outside of our labor and equipment. And then also there would be some standard soft costs such as bonding, legal, admin, engineering fees that would be put into the assessment for that. So tonight we're not looking to approve any assessments or have anything. What we're looking for tonight is to create the improvement district number 2290, and then also to direct the engineer to prepare an engineer's report that we expect to bring back to the December 16th meeting for your approval.
Questions for Mr. Hansen? And this is an actionable item to create an improvement district 2290.
Make motion to approve.
Commissioner Zundel moves to approve to create the improvement district number 2290 and direct the engineer to prepare an engineer's report. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Olson seconds. I have a motion and a second to approve and create the improvement district 2290. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Hanson.
Thank you.
Item number 8 is Improvement District number 3006, Westwood Addition Reconstruction. Again, we're going to call on Mr. Hanson, city engineer. The purpose of the discussion is to approve both an engineer's report and a task order for basic services and direct our engineer to prepare plans and specification. Mr. Hanson.
Thank you again, Commissioner President Dardis and Commissioners. This is a project that on September 16th, 2024, the Commission created the Improvement District and directed the engineer to prepare the report. That has been done. Since then, we also, on November 14th, we did have a Commission workshop where we went through in fairly thorough detail this project and talked a lot about means, methods, techniques of construction. We talked about other ideas as far as potential cost saving, things of that nature. Those all will be vetted and taken into consideration when we get into design for that. What we're here tonight is to approve the engineer's report, which I'll present in just a moment, and then also to get to keep the project on schedule so that we can meet our March bid date to approve a task order to get the consultant going with the design for the project. So I'll jump down into the engineer's report. Really, nothing has changed for the most part since our workshop that we had, so I can definitely go back over some of that material if you'd like. But basically, to cast a broad spectrum over what we're looking to do here is we're reconstructing the entire neighborhood. The water main will be replaced with new PVC. The sanitary clay tile pipe that is in beyond its years of life will be replaced with new PVC. Where there's no storm sewer in the vast majority of the neighborhood, there will be storm sewer. We'll exit that out into the river using a combined force main from the lift station down in the park area. And with that, we would be to basically replace all these utilities. The entire street section needs to come out. And that is also in disrepair in many places in that neighborhood as well. So it's creating a new, it is basically creating a new neighborhood. The other thing that I will point out is that we are looking at, in the 2024 CIP, we moved towards the city paying for 70% of the cost of the project. We are moving forward with applying for grant money. We were successful of obtaining the $110,000 worth of grant funds towards the preliminary engineering that would go towards the replacement of the water main. In total, we have to go back 3 times. We're 1 of 3 down, and we were successful in the first one. We do intend to go back for numbers 2 and 3, and potentially we could get up to $950,000 to $970,000 of grant money that would be put towards paying down the cost of the replacement of the water main. Additionally to that, we are in an effort to, this was another discussion that we had at the meeting, was to apply, are there any other ways to get money cheaper? We are applying for state revolving funds for the clean water and drinking water. What that is it's 2% interest loans that we would be able to get for the cost of the project for the vast majority of the project, because again, when you're replacing all those utilities, the entire street section needs to come out. So all of those things would be eligible towards getting that 2% interest loan money. So we are in the process of applying for those funds to help fund the project. Outside of that, there is pieces of sidewalk in between services that technically aren't needing to be replaced because we're replacing the sanitary and sewer service stubs underneath it. So pieces of that sidewalk would need to be paid for by the city. We intend to pay for that as part of our 70% because that wouldn't generally not be considered eligible because it's not needed to replace those utilities for that funding source I mentioned, as well as the street lighting costs. We would be looking for the city in the 70% that we're paying, we're identifying both those sidewalk costs and those street lighting costs to be taken out of that 70%. The part that would be assessed would that would get us to the 30% would be primarily for your utilities, your sanitary sewer, and your water main, and all the things that go with that, as well as the roadways and things that need to be replaced because of those utilities. Overall, let's see here. Overall, in the engineer's report, it is a project that is estimated for a total of $8,050,000. Of that, we would look that the city, through capital improvement sales tax, potential grant, also potential utility funds such as the water fund if there's availability, would be on paying for $5,635,000 of that, and the assessed cost of the project is estimated to be $2,415,000, and that does include contingencies. So we're hoping we're conservative. We might not be. This is going to be a tough project for a contractor to construct. So eventually, when we bid it out in March, the contractor will tell us the truth of what the cost of the project truly is. But this is a reflection of the feasibility study that the consultant put together for us. So with that, I would entertain any questions.
Questions for Mr. Hanson? Mr. Jorgensen?
So I know numerous people in this development or that area or whatever. And at this meeting in December, are we gonna have a lot of? I mean, I think in our meeting we had you're gonna try to do the project in 4 stages, correct?
That'll be determined during design. Right now in the feasibility study, it did call out that there's potentially 4 phases of design, of construction. So that way, people will be able to be within a block of their house to access their homes.
Right. So, I mean, and there was the other question was brought up to me is, there's overhead power in that area. Is there going to be? Have you talked to Cass County Electric about burying the power?
Yes, we have been in communication with the utilities, and there is a desire for them to coordinate with the project to go underground with that. Nothing is set in stone, but we have initiated those conversations, and there is an intent that we would have a utility coordination design meeting pre-designed, so that way we can get everybody on the same page as far as what they're looking to do. And then if I also could add, as far as a point of just being transparent to that neighborhood, this assumes that we get a favorable vote by the commission tonight, we do plan on having a neighborhood meeting on Tuesday, December 17th, I believe, over at the fire hall, where we can have, it'd be more of a project discussion, a construction discussion, and at that meeting, we would give an example of what was presented in the feasibility study as a potential assessment, but it would not be an assessment hearing or an assessment meeting. That would just be provided because it is information for them to know, obviously, but we wanted to open up the doors to getting feedback from the public as far as maybe people have sprinkler systems, maybe somebody has special needs that they need access, those type of things we want to make sure that we flesh out pre-design. And then I anticipate that this won't be the last public meeting that we'll have for that neighborhood. I imagine that we would have at least 2, if not 3, during this whole design process, so to give them updates on where we're at through the process. So that was additional information I didn't mention before.
Yeah, and that's what I was bringing up is, you know, the thoughts about the garbage, the mail, all that stuff. And this is my first go around, and this is by far probably the toughest neighborhood to do this project yet.
Yeah, it does not lend itself to side streets. It doesn't lend itself to a lot of different things that would be helpful.
Yeah, if we can try to get as much info, I mean, it's probably not going to be a good meeting for us, you know.
Right.
So if we try to get as much information out to them, and are they getting notified by mail?
So there's 2 letters that would move forward coming out of this meeting. We have an intent to send 1 letter tomorrow upon approval. That will not be a letter alerting them to the meeting. That would be a letter stating that that we're moving forward with the project, and basically the engineer needs to go out there and do some survey. We want to make sure, because we're replacing some of the sidewalks in front of these homes, that there isn't settlement up in the yards, and that way if we do replace the sidewalk at an elevation that it should be, we don't want to leave bird baths in the yards. So we are alerting them to just let them know, hey, the survey will be in the neighborhood. There is an intent to go into your property just in the front yards to take some shots, to let us know if they have any issues with that contact information. If somebody says, don't go in my property, we'll stay off their property. The intent would be that we would knock on every door when we get there to make sure that if there is somebody home, they understand what we're doing and why we're out there. So that would be, and also to talk to them about temporary construction easements that we're looking to acquire, because we do have limited right-of-way. And if we can get some temporary construction easements, it allows the contractor more room to work. It'll make it easier for them to build and therefore likely cheaper to construct and bid. So that would be the intent of the first letter that would go out tomorrow. The second letter would go out by the end of the week. That would be a notice to them that we are going to have that meeting on the 17th. We wanted to send those out in 2 different letters because we didn't want it to be too much information in one and they miss the meeting notice. So we will make mention in the first letter that more information is coming on a meeting to be held. And then the letter going out later this week, so that way they'll get the letter arriving in their mailbox this weekend or Monday at the latest for a notice of that meeting the following Tuesday.
No, and that's where I applaud you guys, and I've said it before. I mean, all our department heads do a very good job of making it very clear on all the projects we do, and you guys do a great job at that. And
Thank you.
my contact or my message or communication with the people in that neighborhood, it's all been positive. So, I mean, there was 6 people that are like, yeah, the one guy even stated, he goes, I've lived here for 20 years, never had a special. Something needs to be done. So I hope they stand up and relay that. And one guy that lives over there is the head of our street department. So, and he struggles when it rains. So this is a project, I mean, we all sat in that meeting. It's not, well, it needs to be done. We can't not do anything.
Right, it is at the point where it's failing. And
Yeah.
it's-
So we're one failure away from 71 houses getting flooded. So
Correct.
thank you very much for your hard work, Dan.
Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Zundell.
Are we going to have more than one time for this meeting on December 17th, or are you going to do any type of staggered neighborhood meetings, or are you going to record it? And my only feedback is, I've got 2 young kids, and it's not a lot of notice to give people for an evening night, and 2, everybody's kids are in 7,001 things. So I think having just one meeting time and either not recording the meeting so that people can watch it or have it streamable and accessible
So,
might be worth it. Because basically, if it goes out on Friday, it's the second today. So if it went out on Friday, I mean, you're giving them about 10 days,
right, yeah,
which is not a lot of time.
I agree.
To pull stuff together. So because it's not a lot of time, I guess my hope would be that we record it, we stream it, we do something so that they have access to the information, that they can watch it if they aren't able to be there, especially if we're only doing one meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. And the timing of the meeting, we wanted to give more notice, but then we're into the Christmas
Yeah.
season, so
It's just not it's not a great time for evening
isn't,
things,
so-
just in general. So if it is possible to record it, stream it, do
There-
something.
There was another meeting going on at the fire hall that was in room A. We moved them to C so we could have A and B, because A and B do have technology to use. So I don't have 100% confirmation, but I believe that it will be recorded, at least recorded and watchable, if not streamed. I'm not sure of the streaming capabilities, but if anything, I do believe that it is something that can be recorded on like a Teams or something like that can be posted.
And maybe if it's just a little insert even to the mailer of like, we have a meeting, mark your calendars, meeting on December 17th or so. And hopefully they're reading this and hopefully it makes it into the form if we're talking about it in there. That's just not a lot of time.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be an important meeting, and I want to make sure that their
Absolutely. And
concerns are heard and they understand the project and all the things that are around.
And outside of the meeting, staff is readily available to meet one-on-one for somebody that has a circumstance where they can't make it as well too. So we can definitely fill some gaps with recordings, hopefully streaming, one-on-one meetings, whatever we need to do.
And I also, to piggyback off of what you're saying, I think it's hard with some of these special assessment letters or districts because it only talks about if you don't want this to happen, please contact us. So I think it's important that we're also collecting the feedback and presenting all of the people that do want the project to go forward, because I think there are a lot of people.
Yeah, and
in
just
favor of
to
that
be
as well.
clear, this isn't a protest hearing, this isn't anything
No,
like that.
I'm
It's
just saying
just a public information.
feedback in
meeting.
general. I think
We will be taking some minutes at the meeting if there is any, I'm sure there'll be plenty of comments. I'm sure people are going to want to migrate towards the cost of the project at that meeting. We're hopeful to keep that meeting more of a construction cost, to learn more about what their needs are, anything that they know. But
I think cost of a project is a need, though.
absolutely,
To be fair, like that's probably one
Yep.
of the biggest needs
So-
out of the meeting for them. So
That's exactly what I was talking about when we had a meeting today to discuss how this meeting's going to go, and I'll open the meeting up, turn it over to the consultant who will talk about, here's what we're designing, here's how it's going to be constructed, when it'll be constructed, some of the things that we do know, some of the things that we still need to figure out, and then I would come back in and finish up the meeting with, this is an assessment hearing, however, we do have a feasibility study that did identify what anticipated costs would be. This is the best information we have right now, and we were going to provide that for full transparency to those people, and just let them know of, here's how the assessment process works and when things will happen too. So try to lay out clear expectations for them of that and see where the meeting goes from there.
thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Anything additional from Mr. Hanson?
Move we approve.
Commissioner Olson moves that we approve Improvement District 3006. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Jorgensen seconds. It's been moved and seconded to approve, to create Improvement District number 3006, approve both the engineer's report and a task order for basic services, and to direct the engineer to prepare plans and specifications. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Hanson.
Thank you.
Item number 9 is the first reading of Ordinance 1250 relating to nuisance violations.
Thank you,
Call
President.
on Onstead Twitchell for this.
Thank you, President Darders. Our office worked with the police department on some proposed revisions to the nuisance ordinance. The first couple deal with license and permitting animals. The proposed changes switch from an infraction to a non-criminal offense. And the purpose of those was so that they can be cited versus if they're an infraction, the person has to report to municipal court to answer for those. So if they get a citation, they can still come in, they can still contest it, but it's switching that from an infraction to a non-criminal offense. Those are the first couple. Collections of animal solid waste public property. That one switches it to fines, also makes it so they don't have to appear in municipal court. Animals running at large, same thing, making it a non-criminal offense that can be issued to or issued through citation. Animal noise is the same thing, as well as the barking. The second half of the proposed nuisance revisions deals with control of grasses and non-noxious weeds and some other violations and how the police department can respond to those. Right now, a notice goes out, and then another notice can go out, and another notice can go out, and there's really no remedy. These proposed changes have a notice going out for the first violation in a calendar year, and then for the second, the third, whatever those violations are, it gives the police department the ability to cite them or do a long-form complaint with those. So those are really the proposed changes that are out there. I'm open to any questions that you guys have.
I see one of the line items that says punishable and finable. Do we have a schedule of what those fines are?
I don't know that there is one right now that is set forth. It would be like the annual ones that are approved.
Yeah, I'm on page 112 of the 119, and I'm in section 11-0301, and it's regarding animal noises. Violation of this section is punishable as a non-criminal offense, punishable by a fine. That's all well and good, but if we don't have a schedule of what the fines are, the judge will probably dismiss that, would he not? Would they
Right.
not?
Yep, no, the fines will be set forth in a separate ordinance.
Very good. All right, thank you. Commissioner Zundell?
Are there any escalations to any of these, or perhaps, Mr. Bergsmeyer, you could, do we have habitual offenders of this? I've got to imagine barking, howling dogs, animals off leash. These are going to be people you encounter frequently. Are there escalations, or because I'm not really thinking a $20 fine every single time you show up to talk about a barking dog is really going to make a difference, especially if they have to appear in court currently. So I guess, is there any, I mean, does this just change it so it's perpetually like whatever that fine is? You just pay $20 every time we have to come talk to you about your barking dog?
Would defer to the police department on that, on how that works.
Yeah, right now there are some escalations, but I think the intent of this, especially for the nuisance ones and the repeat offenders, are to be able to have the officers cite them right away rather than having this process take potentially months to go through
Right.
the court process. So I don't know what the proposed escalations would be. That's the individual that's working on it from the police department has been working with Onstead Twitchell, and I don't know if they've come up with what they want them to be, but that would be the goal.
To some type of,
Yep.
so maybe there could potentially be escalations into something criminal, do we think? Or is it,
I don't know if they want it to be criminal, but I believe just higher amounts for repeat offenders.
okay, so just like a fine,
Yes.
continuing to fine. And then if they don't pay those fines, then that's criminal?
Then it would go through the clerk of court, and they would issue a summons, and then they would have to appear in court.
And then if they didn't appear,
Then they would issue a warrant.
then we would get a warrant at that point for them.
Right.
I bet the jail will be at capacity for those violations.
Very
I
good
have
odds.
a sneaking suspicion. Okay, and then do you have any idea, sorry that you're on the spot today, how many offenders this is? Do we have any idea like how many tickets we are currently doing for these?
I do not know. It would just be a guess if I
On the
said
spot.
something.
We could always see if you're close to the pin, you know? Is it common?
We do get quite a few complaints on animals, and then the the nuisance calls, the non-shoveled sidewalks and unmowed lawns and all that stuff. We get a lot of those.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions, Commissioners? You have anything else for us this evening?
I do not, thank you.
Move we approve first reading.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Zundell seconds it. We have a motion and a second for the first reading of ordinance 1250 relating to nuisance violations. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item number 10, City Commission per diem and reimbursement expense policy. Mr. Dustin Scott, City Administrator.
Good evening. Thank you, Commission President Dardis and Commissioners. Well, really, this ordinance is in place. You guys are busy. We've got a lot of committees, a lot of business that takes place outside of the city. Thankfully, you guys are participating in regional impact type items. And so really what this policy is meant to do is to give commissioners a fair opportunity to be reimbursed for that travel and attendance to those committee meetings and other regional community events. Did ask our city attorney, Katie Schmidt, to help prepare and draft this policy. I believe it's based on a similar policy used in the city of Moorhead. We did have some staff review it as well, so it has been out in front of your eyes for the last few weeks, and really tonight, if you're prepared, you could make a motion to adopt the policy, looking for it to be effective January 1st, 2025. So that would be one option forward. Otherwise, we could take additional feedback and come back to the December 16th meeting. So with that, I will stand for any questions.
Questions for Mr. Scott? Commissioner Olson?
Just a point of clarifications, would we want to put in here that they have to be in-person attendance of the meetings? rather than Zooming, like today, I participated in a Zoom meeting. I just want to make sure that's clear here. It just says attendance of meetings. I attended a Zoom meeting today. Do I get my 15 bucks? No. You have to be, I just want to make it clear that it has to be in person, that if there's no wiggle room there.
Absolutely, yeah, I think that's very
And
logical
I
to
know
put in
it's
there.
intended,
Yep.
but it doesn't actually say that.
Oh, very good point. We can certainly add that language.
Anyone else? Anything for Mr. Scott? Why are we doing this? Why are we paying a commissioner $15 to go to, I will never submit an expense report for me to go to a meeting in Fargo or Moorhead. It's, I don't agree with it.
Well, Commission President, what has been in place is an unwritten policy of a lump sum payment to commissioners and the commission president each year. And so really this will add a more formal policy and then a reimbursement as it is being used versus just a one lump sum payment each year. So if the commission were to desire not to have any reimbursement for attending committee meetings or events outside of the city, that is absolutely the direction the commission can give and go that route. But we did think it was certainly prudent to put something formal in place or eliminate that lump sum stipend altogether.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any additional comments, questions, Mr. Scott? What would you like to do with it, commissioners?
I'm kind of like, I'm with you. I'm not going to submit a $15 meeting when I go to a, food commission meeting or anything like that. I mean, I think it's reasonable to have travel policies where if we're driving to something in Bismarck, we're going to something regional, we submit that just as we would any other process, whether, I feel good about that. I'm personally not ever going to submit a $15 reimbursement request, but that being said, if we need to have a policy, we need
We're not
have
going to be
policy.
commissioners forever, so it might,
Right. I guess that's what I'm saying. Like, we may not be commissioners forever. We can have it if it's there. If $15 is the amount that we've come up with to have in case someone does want that, then I think that's great. I can support that. I appreciate the work that you put into coming up to doing that. That's where I'm at with it. I'm not going to use it, but I appreciate the fact that we want to have something formalized.
my comments was not to speak against this. I'm going to vote in favor of it, but it's just not in my DNA to do this. Okay. So,
So I would make a motion to approve.
Commissioner Zundell moves to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Olson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the per diem and reimbursable expense policy as outlined by Mr. Scott this evening. Is there any further discussion?
Do we need to have a condition on there with the addition of the out-of-town or in-person meetings?
In-person meetings, yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you for reminding me of that. Commissioner Anderson, yes. In-person meetings is what this applies to. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 11. Mr. Scott.
Thank you again, Commission President Dardis and Commissioners. Well, if you had your media notifications turned on before the meeting, you may have seen an early news article come out on Valley News Live announcing that Paul Fracassi has been hired as our new city assessor. We were just so excited we couldn't keep our finger off the send button. But tonight, we formally do need to appoint him as a city assessor because he is that is one of our few appointive officer positions in the city, along with the police chief, fire chief, building inspector, city engineer, and city administrator. So as that is an appointive officer, we do need a formal action appointing him, as well as the opportunity to bring him up here and say hello and introduce himself. So before we get to the action, if you don't mind, I would call on Mr. Fracassi.
Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Commission President and members of the Commission. Thank you for the warm welcoming here, and I got to say I'm extremely excited to be back here in West Fargo. For those of you who don't know, I started my career here in 2006, and I had an opportunity after working here for 10 years to grow into a leadership role at Cass County. But when I saw the opportunity came up to be back with the city of West Fargo, it meant a tremendous amount to me. This is a great staff and great city to be a part of. And I just look forward to continuing what this office has built in transparency and more than anything, just educating our stakeholders on our process that our department handles on a day-to-day basis. So with that, I thank you for this opportunity.
Anyone have any questions of Mr. Fracassi? Welcome.
Welcome back.
We're pleased to have you back home.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I had the pleasure of being part of the interview process for Mr. Fracassi for this position. And you talk about a good feeling about hiring an individual that has the expertise and the personality to fit in well with the rest of them. So it would be my honor and privilege to move for the appointment of Paul Fracassi for city assessor. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Zundel seconds. Then moved and second to appoint Paul Fracassi as a city assessor for the city of West Fargo. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Congratulations. Item number 12, City Administrator's Report. Mr. Scott?
Thank you once again. Just one thing for you. Our finance director, Willie, he's not here tonight. He's in the process of moving from California, moving his family down here finally. He's been able to acquire a house. But I did want to share some news from the finance department that he has initiated our audit for 2024 with our auditors. So that work will be starting promptly, on time, as soon as we get through the year-end financial stuff in January. So he has already scheduled a visit or a meeting with Ide Bailey, and I'm just, again, excited that we are on track with this, and he is doing well and settling into his role as a finance director. So really, that's the only update I have for you. Stand for any other questions you have for me.
Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Scott? Commissioner Jorgensen?
Is there progress on the special meeting cost? The cost we incur on special meetings, I don't know if it was last.
Liquor
commission
board, like
meeting.
the.
Yeah, if we
liquor
have to call a special meeting. Is there progress on, I forgot to ask you about that when we had our meeting last week. I'm sorry for that.
Yeah, nope, good question.
For like emergency meetings.
Yes, Commissioners, if you recall, 2 meetings ago, I believe, during our non-agenda, Commissioner Jorgensen did bring up looking into adding some additional fees for when we have special meetings for, say, for example, Liquor Control Board. And Commissioner Anderson is also on that board, and so they had directed staff to look into that. I know Emily has been looking into some of those things, and I believe our plan was to share them with the Liquor Control Board first. Yep, so at our next Liquor Control Board meeting, I hope to have information for that body to discuss.
Fair enough, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Any other questions?
Anything else for Mr. Scott?
Update on the new commission chamber.
Oh, yes, yes. They're busy, but I think I might defer that to Nick Lee, if you don't mind coming up. I don't want to overstep my bounds. Things seem to change on a daily basis, and that's the guy quarterbacking that one, so I'll let him provide an update on that.
The update is we're still looking at February 3rd. That's the first Monday in February. There's one particular door that's being a real bugger about getting that thing ordered and in. So that's kind of holding up the whole project.
Any additional questions for Mr. Lee? Thank you. Mr. Scott?
And I just wanted to add something. Talking with Commissioner Dardis today, this morning, when we do have that first meeting at our new chambers, we plan to have a tour or an open house, if you will. Open up, say, at 4 o'clock and let the public come in and tour not only the commission chambers, but the building itself, and do that right before our first meeting in there, so. With that, any other questions?
I've had a number of people from the public ask about it and ask when they could have a tour of the city, and I've asked them to consider a little later until, you know, the commission chambers is done. So,
Good.
thank you for that. Correspondence, any correspondence we have would have been distributed to you, commissioners. Does any commissioner have any non-agenda item this evening you'd like to bring up? Does any department head have any non-agenda item they'd like to bring up this evening? Commissioner Jorgensen,
Motion to adjourn.
Commissioner Zundell,
Second.
we're adjourned. Thank you.